So here we are. We're lighting the candle again and creating a world that works through conversation. We're here to discuss in whatever terms we can or whatever seems like it makes sense, the access to empowerment, encouragement, and the third E was engagement from last week. Well, I've got a fourth E this week, and I'm going to talk about empathy. I'm going to talk about something that requires communication at a different level. Let's just say that the construct that I'm going to be putting out today for your approval is whether or not the sixth sense actually is empathy. So with that in mind, we'll start off with our guests here. Again, I'm Bill Carell. I love doing this and having these wonderful people to chat with every Thursday. And with that said, I'd like to kick it over to Ken so you can introduce yourself, say hello, and then whatever your interpretation of empathy is.
Okay. So hi, I'm Ken Caputo, founder of Quester's Way. And empathy, this is an interesting topic. I guess, and we should probably pull up the definition because that's always fun, have the actual definition of it. But personally, I think it speaks to, that whole idea of recognizing the value and the space that someone else holds and trying to find a way to identify with that. So feeling through their feelings, that kind of thing. So, and it's definitely an interesting thing actually, because working with kids from a social emotional perspective, empathy is something that develops, and it's just like physical attributes, it doesn't develop equally. So, we've actually done drills with kids where they're playing a game where they're showing emotion and the other kid is trying to guess the emotion that they're seeing. And some of them aren't very good at it. It's just, it's not, they haven't developed that skill yet. So we practice it and we make it fun in a game. But, it's something that what I came away from that, recognizing it's something that if you're intentional about it, you can cultivate it and, improve your ability to be empathic in the way that you deal with your relationships. And when you do that, I think there's a lot more depth and value that's created. So that's the best
Terrific.
I got.
That is terrific. That's what we're always giving is our what's called out of us, not necessarily what's pre-planned or scripted.
Yeah.
So Lisa, and again, welcome Vanessa. She's on the call now. We're really pleased to have you here. And I know you're going to be AWOL the next couple of weeks because you got some things going on that you need to take care of. And so we're sending you a lot of, an empathic love at the moment and really enjoying the fact that you're here. And Shelly's coming on too. So today's conversation is a little bit different because we were talking last week about empowerment. We were also talking about encouragement and also engagement. So I've added another E this week, which is empathy. And what we're going to be doing is considering that empathy possibly is a sixth sense. And so you can argue for or against it. It doesn't matter. But I think it's an interesting conversation for us to have with the world affairs as they are right now and the people that we run into on a daily basis. And real interested in what your thoughts are. Lisa, you're up next.
Hi, Lisa Sheehan. My side gig is co-publishing Epic magazine, and since it's a conscious living magazine and a lot of wellness practitioners and healing centers and things like that, empathy is talked about often. So to me, it's either an emotional or it can include a physical understanding of what somebody else is going through. The other aspect of it is I've seen it as a almost like a spiritual bypass kind of thing, where people say, "Oh, I can't handle it because I must be feeling you too much," or that they're putting what they're feeling on another person instead of dealing with their own issues sometimes. So I've seen both sides of the coin. I think, as Ken probably kind of alluded to it when he was talking, was that everybody's empathic to some level. So I don't think I feel it viscerally. I sometimes can sense it in other people, read a room, as they say. But I think it's definitely a good tool to have if you use it constructively.
Excellent. Thank you. Miss Vanessa, you're looking marvelous today. I think you're losing weight. I mean, looking at that picture.
Like green and white smiley phone, right?
Yeah.
I always think it looks like a smiley face. I don't know. Maybe you guys don't. But yeah, glad to be here. So you're talking about empathy. I love that you added the fourth E. I was really excited, Bill, when you mentioned that. Engage, empowerment, and encouragement. And now empathy. Empathy is huge. I agree with pretty much what everyone else was saying. So I don't really have much to add there. But were you talking about empathy in any particular context? I don't know if I missed that. Anything specifically how it applies?
I'm posing a question to you. What if empathy is the sixth sense?
What? Say that again? Sorry.
What if empathy is the sixth sense, like hearing, sight, touch, taste?
Right. Yeah. I don't know if it's so much would be a sixth sense. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but maybe it's a virtue. I think it's really important. I think empathy is a part of being a human being. I think we need to have empathy to connect with each other and to really fully, what does empathy mean? But stepping inside someone else's shoes. So, I think it's a really important thing, and it's part of what makes us human. It's combined with the governor in our minds. Our conscience even possibly. We know when we're hurting someone, either physically or emotionally or psychologically, and we're able to say, okay, no, I don't want to do that. Or depending on what our intentions are and where our heart is, or maybe I do want to do that, but we can feel that other person's pain. And I think generally empathy is there within us. But I like how you put it as a possible sense, because it's, what is sight, touch, taste, sound, smell? Those are all ways of communicating with each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're ways of, understanding, navigating our world physically with our senses. And if one sense is, like, say we're blinded for some reason, then all of a sudden we're going to be able to hear a lot easier. So losing one sense can overcompensate. The other senses will then overcompensate. And I think senses are a matter of survival also. So, so to go along with what you were saying about it being a sixth sense of ours, it's again a matter. I think it's important for navigating the world around us to have empathy.
Great thoughts, and really glad you're here. So, anything else, Vanessa?
No.
Great, good kickoff. And my old buddyette, Shelley, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. Thank
Yes.
you. Sorry, I joined a little late. So I kind of jumped in around the encourage, the empower. I missed one, and then the empathy. What was the fourth one?
Well, the fourth one was the 3 E's that we talked about last week.
Okay, and then you added empathy.
And now the fourth one is empathy. There may be others as we go along. One can never tell.
No. So, Shelley Kohler. I am coach, business advisor, mother of 2 4-legged furry wild children. And kind of jumping into the conversation or a continuation of last week, which I thoroughly enjoyed. You know, to go back to Vanessa and even Lisa and Ken, I missed yours. If you spoke first, which I'm very disappointed in, but I'm sure
It was great. I mean, it was really noteworthy.
I'll have to listen to it later. So I think in some respects, all of these have different levels. So, you know, Vanessa, when you were saying you weren't quite sure if it was if it's a sixth sense or not, I think on everybody has a different level of empathy. And to some, empathy literally drives the inner core being of them. They feel everything. And they're just, they've honed in on that sense, or it was a gift. Because empathy, and this is my stance on it, is not something that everybody has, at least on the same level. You can go through life and gain empathy because through your experiences, right? And learning that, oh, I did that, I hurt somebody, and then you connect the dots and you have empathy the next time. There are extremely different levels to how people feel this. Some don't have to experience it, they just feel it. Case in point, I have a friend who, whenever this one particular time we were driving along the highway and we passed a really, really bad accident. Like, she just went white as a ghost. And she started crying and sobbing, and she's like, I just felt everything that just happened there. And as I can feel that on a partial level, and which also kind of drives the person who I am, right? Like, I have empathy for that homeless person on the street. Some people don't. They walk by and go get a job. But and it's not because I've been homeless. It's because I feel I can, on some level, be in their shoes without having to have experienced that. Whatever you want to call that, gift or spiritual connection, not everybody has that. So I would lean more towards, yes, I do believe it is a sixth sense. Can it be developed if in fact you pay attention to it, right? But I think it's developing really your connection with your own spirituality and with the world around you. As we come into this world, we're all given different purposes and different gifts, and finding those out and really being with them. It's not wrong, bad, or indifferent. Someone has a different level or different attunement to it. It's just what it is. And then you nurture that. So, this is as well on the levels of encouragement and empowerment. Everybody has a different level of how they encourage people.
Sure.
You look at the 70s and 80s with coaches. That encouragement would not fly today. So there's also
you hammerhead, what's wrong with you, huh?
Right.
Take a lap.
Exactly, right? So I think it's also really just curating that, and as well paying attention to and being okay with that. So that's kind of where I go. And as a survival piece, absolutely. I'm kind of playing off of some words that Vanessa kind of threw out there. Our senses are our survival skills. And those that are in different parts of the world. If you're a nurse without empathy, that's probably not the right profession, right? So there's different things that will kick in as we move through life. And that's the navigation piece. So, and with Lisa said, it's really the inner core spiritual piece. And Ken, I can't refer back to you, but I'm sure you had some fabulous pieces that.
Just close your eyes and pretend and you'll get it, because you're so empathic to begin with.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, jumping into this conversation that the empathy piece that I have.
That's excellent. And I find that both eloquent and very persuasive. And in terms of being on the side of empathy being a sixth sense. So I did look up the dictionary definition, and essentially what they're saying is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And what I find kind of interesting is that it's from Greek empatheia, which where em means in, and pathos is feeling. Translating German, it came through the Germans to us. Einfühlung, okay? That was my making up a German pronunciation of a word I've never seen before. So here's the neat part, and what we've kind of been dancing around. Again, a lot of these conversations, what we're doing is we're being Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? In that movie where he doesn't see the beast. All he can do is to see it knock down trees, but he doesn't have a real sense of the beast itself until he actually can visually, connect with it. So the whole idea of a sense being experiential, I think we can agree that sight, sound, taste, the other five that we are convinced are for sure five senses we all have, even though many don't have all five. They're experiential in nature. They actually are an input-output organ, interface to something in your body, and each one has a specific organ that it informs, and that informs your experience in the rest of your body. So the whole notion of actually being able to share the feelings of another is that experiential thing, and I could not agree with you more. Standing on the shoulders of your argument, and I don't mean that in a legal sense, I mean it more of like in a programming sense where you write a sentence and then another sentence responds to it, and then something happens. So the argument that it is a sixth sense because it is in fact an experiential, kind of a manifestation. And it almost always involves the other, at least two or three of, or if not all five of the other senses to be fully engaged with it. Okay, so if you stop and think about it for a moment, we have muscle. We can change whatever our capacity is for those other senses, either by vitamins or by surgery or exercise. Building muscle in terms of touch. If you know anyone who is blind, they don't immediately translate dots on a flat surface into 2 dots or 4 dots or 5 dots. They have to learn how to experience those as letters and representational language. So empathy, in complete agreement with you, Shelley, is something that is a muscle that can be increased over time by putting attention to it. And so then the next question would be how? What's the access? What is the access to developing empathy, which if you stop and think about it, all the other senses they're invisible. They just happen. They're the firing of neurons somewhere in your body that inform sense of smell or sight or hearing. And empathy, have you ever picked up the phone and knew who was on the other end of the phone line and said, "Hello, Janet," or "Hello, Steve"? How did you know? I just knew. So what if it's a very strong spiritual listening, and the access and the organ that empathy works with is the soul? What if it's reaching out into the ether, into the in-between, into all that information that's traveling around us and tuning into something kind of like a radio station? What if?
Always a what if. Love the what ifs.
Yeah.
So I think it takes, as you put, right, for one to actually have the other, maybe not all five, but the other senses that are available to them engaged. And, there are a lot of people out there who are not engaged, and having one of those senses, right, being feeling, like understanding your own feelings and being able to process some of those.
Yeah.
You hit on a point in the definition, the ability to feel and share. Okay, so you may have experienced from seeing something, right?
Yep.
But the experience hasn't translated into you to actually being able to feel it. So there's a level of empathy there, right? Like, have seen this before, how can I help, right? So that's one level of empathy that is kind of surface. But then you get to, and this can be reversed, someone who actually feels it, like deeply, but does not know how to share or move it through to have it actually be a positive. Because if you take on so many people's energies and you don't have an ability to release it or push it out in a positive manner or get rid of it, it harbors in you, and sometimes in a not so good way.
Yes.
So I think there's kind of this ebb and flow, right? That there's no way to put your finger on it, and it is experiential, but on a very sixth sense, right? It's not tangible.
Yes.
And trying to share the feeling, if a true empath can literally walk into a hospital and know what it feels like without having had it happen to them, what that person is going through. And I have a friend who's that way and said, this is what this person's feeling. They can't tell you that, but I feel it, and it's in my leg. Whatever, right, the attunement that they're in with. But my point is feeling it and then being able to share it is a very fine, it's a gift, right, on that level.
Yeah.
And they are very fine-tuned in their senses, and that's how they live.
Yeah. So if you were to look at my two hands as two circles of a Venn diagram, this circle over here, is sharing, and this circle over here is feeling. So when you get to the point where the two overlap and become the same universe in a Venn circle, then you have feeling and sharing, which equals empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Anything short of having the and in the middle, I say, is something else. And keep going, keep playing with it, keep working with it, keep loving your friends and your family, and keep trying to get to that place of understanding and feeling and sharing. So awesome. Vanessa, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, Bill, I thought it was brilliant, actually, that when you mentioned intuition before, and it sounded, at least the way I understood, is you were combining the definition of intuition with empathy. And I thought, because originally I thought, no, wait a minute, what he's describing is intuition, not empathy. So, like I said, I just think it was brilliant that you combined the two.
Yeah.
In a moment, I looked up the definition of intuition, and I know you shared the definition of empathy before, which is the ability to feel and share
Sure.
what others are feeling. But intuition's definition is the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. So, when I looked that up, I thought, wow, yeah, those two could, empathy could be a type of intuition, and vice versa, I guess. But and Shelley had mentioned that there are different levels of empathy, and I think she said that it's possible for people not to have empathy, or if not, I'm adding that. But I think she was describing also that empathy is a gift, or maybe someone else said that. But empathy can be a gift, and we have different levels. But one of the things I was thinking about too is that some people, which is interesting, because I'm thinking, well, don't we all have intuition? But there are people that don't have empathy. There actually are people that don't have empathy. And if we ask, I don't know if this has come up, but the question of can empathy be taught? In that case, if someone doesn't have, they don't have empathy. There's actually, psychological labels for people who actually they're just not wired. They're born without it. And then those are different kind of people. So they can act like they have empathy and sympathy, but they don't. They just learn it by watching others. But that's a whole other breed of person. And in fact, I think it can be dangerous if someone doesn't have empathy. Again, if well, I don't want to speak darkly, but like I was talking before about having that governor that stops you from hurting someone, especially, and what helps is if you can feel that person's pain. And Shelley, I have a question about what you were describing also with the empath. Is another term for that? Is that a highly sensitive person? Someone that can feel what's going on, like when they enter a hospital room and yet they're not one of the patients, but they can feel what the patients are going through, even if they've never experienced it before in their lives?
I don't know if they put another terminology or label on that, because when I
We're
would
making this up, guys, okay?
Yeah.
So you don't have to be bound by what you've read someplace else. It's not the truth.
Well, so when I think of a highly sensitive person, right, I think of someone who is very sensitive to, even more so in the physical sense,
Yes.
right, versus the feeling sense. So there's a distinction, right? The ability to feel and share what someone else is going through versus being very sensitive and highly sensitive to what's coming at you. Like, I'm sensitive and aware of how people speak, how they say words, and then it goes into my mind and interprets it all and goes, okay, they seem a little on edge just by the way they speak. I'm in tune and sensitive to that. That's what I would kind of put in a box of highly sensitive and emotional.
Okay.
So that's where the distinction kind of comes in versus to the ability to really feel and share, and being that empath. That's kind of the distinction there.
So rather than collapse those two words, intuition and empathy, I'd like to take a moment and distinguish them from each other, how you tell them apart. Okay. Empathy is sharing and feeling in the now. Intuition is relying on the autonomic system in your body to react to something of its own volition. It's instinctual. It has no necessary, it's not informed by what's happening right now. It is coming to life to give you information about what it believes is happening, which may or may not be true. Does that make sense? Intuition being not necessarily a translation of what's happening, it's only giving you information from the library that you already possess. It's instinctual in nature, which is the fight or flight or those types of things that, in psychology, you talk about people's automatic reactions to things, and if they're not examined, then they can be problematic. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me, yes. And the definition for intuition, though, it says without the need for conscious reasoning. So, but you're saying it's based on someone's experiences. It
comes from the library you already have.
Okay.
It's not informed by anything that's happening to you. It's a reaction to what's happening to you. That's what an instinct is, I say.
So the difference between empathy and intuition is that empathy is something that, may not be relying on past experience.
Right. And I would, if we were going to name which system intuition belongs to, I would say it's part of the system that keeps you breathing all the time. The one you don't have to think about. Does that make sense? It's an automatic routine that runs on its own. You don't get a vote on your intuition, do you? Uh-oh. So I'll tell you what, we're having a really great discussion. I can't wait to get to the other side, but I'd like to give Ken and Lisa an opportunity to weigh in for a moment. What are you hearing, guys?
Well, it dawned on me afterwards that growing up, sixth sense meant you were psychic. That was, are you using your sixth sense? That was the way I always heard it. And then when you were
the 1970s version, right?
Yeah, when you were talking about intuition and empathy, the difference in definition, I'm thinking, well, psychic is probably a combination of those two. So ultimately.
Yeah.
And then all I could think of if it can be taught, practice, it's a simple thing. It's like either expecting everything to be a miracle or nothing to be a miracle. So if you constantly look for the synchronicities and why it's happening, like picking up the phone and knowing that it might be something, but not paying attention that you even had that feeling, or anything like that. Somebody mentions a word and, two phone calls later, that same word pops up again, and then you start talking and it brings in other correlations. So, there's intuition and empathicism in there
Great
too.
word. I love it.
I just made it. But I know we're close to the end, so I just wanted to get those two thoughts out there.
Thank you very much. Ken, anything in your mind that won't survive till after the break?
Well, maybe just a brief thing. I think that all of these things can be cultivated, and like we're all capable of running, but we're not all capable of running a 4-minute mile, no matter what we do. We're just not ever going to be able to do that because of how we were born and developed as a human. Whereas other people without a lot, with a lot of effort, they can develop that. So I mean, empathy kind of feels like one of those spectrums, and the reality of it is, staying with a running metaphor, you can run better, I mean, through practice, through intention and attention. So when we think about one of the basic things we do when we're teaching someone to be a teacher is we help them recognize the idea of communicating audibly, visually, and kinesthetically, and as a starting point. And invariably, everyone who's a novice teacher is using one of those three based on the way that they learn best. So if they learn best through auditory, they tend to be over-explainers. And what we have to do is first bring their attention to the fact that other people take in information more visually, and other people need to experience it experientially. And then it's hard for them. It's hard for them to actually remember to be visual in their teaching or experiential if they're auditory. But over time, they get better and better at that. And eventually, they start to recognize in the other person how they best learn, and they intuitively start to teach that way. So the intuition becomes a result of a practice, an intention practice, to the point of what we call no mind. They no longer have to think about it. Right. And we absolutely build the social emotional element, the empathic element into it as well. So when you're communicating, how are they feeling about it? Are they feeling, do you feel frustration from them or excitement from them? And then they learn to guide that until eventually that becomes something that creeps into all of their interactions intuitively. So, so it just kind of struck me. I mean, a lot of these things, and that doesn't mean someone may never be highly empathic, just like they may never run a 4-minute mile, but they can develop it. They can cultivate it over time.
You're reminding me of a conversation I had with a dear friend named Don Postemski. I don't know if you ever knew Don. Don was kind of a character in the area for a long time. He actually did a lot of antiquing, back in the early 1990s. And he had a shop over on Route 6 in the building where the spa place is now. And he put a basket inside that building, a basketball hoop at 10 feet. And he said, I'm going to learn how to dunk this basketball. And I said, well, I'm right there with you too. I mean, I was a 42-year-old man at the time, and I don't know how old Don was. He's more or less older or younger. we couldn't will ourselves to be able to get that ball over the top of the hoop and through it. It just wasn't going to happen. Okay? So this isn't one of those things that you can think or you can hope or you could never develop that skill as you just said. The 4-minute mile is another one. I can do a 4-minute quarter mile. Yeah, all day.
Yeah. However, if you lowered that basketball hoop 2 feet, all of a sudden you could dunk it. It's all relative.
Michael Jordan, and I'm doing it behind the back and between the legs. And
yeah. So, and the height of the basketball hoop is arbitrary. Someone decided that was going to be the height, so, but it doesn't
and there is agreement for that.
Cultivate. Height. Yeah, exactly. So,
awesome way to end this portion of today's first segment. So join us again in a few minutes. We're going to continue having fun with each other, and we're hoping it'll be infectious and that you will get the empowerment that you're looking for today and carry it on into your lives. We'll be back shortly. Bye for now.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a world that works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.